What's up, YouTube? This is the Working Investor. In this video, we're going to talk about why your high yield dividend ETFs are something that can propagate you into retirement really quickly. We're going to talk about social insecurity, or should I say social security. We're going to talk about mistakes that a lot of people do that I've noticed. In my opinion, they are massive mistakes in the investment community. Lots of flawed thinking, fallacies in thinking. And we're going to talk about what I'm going to be investing in this coming week or the next week, what I'm looking into. Let's get into the video. So let's talk about, unfortunately, something a little bit more morbid. The average life expectancy in the United States is 77.5 years, 77 years old, 77 and a half years old. A lot of us, and I'm sure you all know people that they work their entire lives just to get to the golden age, and then they die. They drop dead. They have cancer. They have a heart attack. I know too many people in their 50s and 60s that worked their entire life, worked really hard, and they never got to see their golden age and never got to live the life the way they wanted to live their life, spend the time with their family. So many sacrifices they had. When somebody, when you make decisions in your life, I heard a very wise saying, always make decisions based on the mindset of your deathbed. When one is on your deathbed, are you going to think to yourself, I wish I worked an extra shift at work? Or you say, I wish I retired a year earlier and then live life on my terms, travel to this place, spend time, go visit your extended family, go spend time with your kids, go spend time with your loved ones, do something to help the community, do something, you know what I mean? But it's a shame that we don't get to live life on our terms. A lot of us invest as if basically we're going to live forever, but we're not. We're not living 1,000 years. Maybe with AI we can upload our brain to the cloud or something. I don't know, but I'm talking a little bit of futuristic jibble jargon. This is something crazy. If you guys have noticed this, I call it social insecurity because that's what really it is. It's not social security. It's not secure. It's insecure, right? Because who knows if they're ever going to keep it up. If you notice, there's something called full retirement age. The government, basically, before the year 2000, full retirement age of Social Security, because the government lets you take Social Security a few years before full retirement age, what they consider full retirement age. And if you do take it earlier, you get a reduced amount. And then if you take it after full retirement age, you can increase your amount up to an extent. So it used to be 62 years old at the year 2000, before the year 2000, excuse me. Then the government increased it to 65. There's talks about them increasing it gradually to 67. But as you guys saw, the average lifespan in the United States is 77 and a half. It's not by mistake that they're increasing it. They want less and less people to be on it for less amount of time. And then actually people are going to be working longer, paying in for it longer, more, and using it less. That's the idea. So I know there are two camps out there. There's like Dave Ramsey, which he talks about take your darn Social Security ASAP. Even take it as early as possible, even 4 or 5 years earlier if you can. And even though you get a lesser amount, you could pocket all that money if you don't need it, and you could just invest it. And you probably most likely do a better job investing it than the government. The government is horrible with being a steward of money, as you can see. And then there are people that, are living paycheck to paycheck by the poverty, living under the poverty line. They probably want to take it as late as possible because they're in humongous fear of being without. So they want to work as long as they're able to and then get the most as they can. So there are two camps out there. It depends on your circumstance individually. There is something called health span. So there's lifespan and then there's health span. How many years are you going to be healthy in this world? So the average health span, even though the lifespan is 77 and a half, the average health span, years that average American is healthy, according to the World Health Organization, is 66.1 years old, right? So basically, you only got like basically anything you wanted to do, go hike Mount Everest or go travel or do a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, those plans are going to go out the window if you're sick, if you're on chemotherapy, if you're on dialysis, if you're a horrible diabetic that's getting their toes chopped off, you're going blind, all your organs are shutting down, going into severe heart failure. There's, strokes. There's so much one can only do when their life and health is deteriorating. So that's obviously the average American with the average American diet and lifestyle, sedentary lifestyle, horrible, horrible diet. If you eat healthy and you exercise and you sleep well and you have a strong bond with the community and you don't overstress yourself in life, you put the odds in your favor to being healthy longer. There are people that are in their 90s that are healthier than people that are in their 30s because of life choices. Obviously, there's also luck and there's also genetics, but unfortunately, the average health span in the United States is 66. So if you're healthier and you're up and about after the age of 66, you should give yourself a pat on the back because you're doing something right. You're beating the odds. So who wants to be, they call it wheelchair rich. You don't want to be wheelchair rich. So one of the biggest investments you can do in yourself is try to take care of your health. And it's so crazy how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The people who retire earlier are able to have the means to take better care of their health because they have the time and they have the money and they have the means. But all you have to do is have the will. So there's no secret that the government, they're betting that your Social Security will come in at 67, but they understand that the average person will be halfway on death's row with their illness at 66. So they're like, okay, you got 1 year. At the time you get Social Security, you're already like halfway gone. So guys, take care of your health. Take care of your health. There are a lot of YouTubers out there, and I'm not here to shame anybody. I'm not here to point anybody out. And everybody has their own investment journey, and everybody makes their own choices. In my opinion, they're making huge mistakes in their thinking. I'm not here to, point at anybody, but there are some people that only look at one or two metrics when it comes to investing. They look at yield. I would say they're yield chasers, and we're all guilty. I'm looking for the highest yield. Who's not looking for the highest yield, right? But they're only looking for the highest yield as their only metric. Maybe a second metric, which will be which week of the month do they pay, because they want to get paid weekly. Now, even though getting paid a certain week, they're using a suboptimal investment pathway, they would still choose to get paid the other, whatever week they, certain weeks, even though they're getting crappy investments and crappy returns. There's something called being paid weekly, like every week, and there's something called being paid weekly, like they're not a strong payment, and they're choosing weekly payments. And there's something called the risk adjusted return. I talk about this a lot on my channel. If you're making 5% in the stock market, you are a complete idiot. I'm sorry. You're in your investment. Your investments are completely stupid. Why? Because there's something called a risk-free rate. 5% in the stock market, you can also get 5% in your high yield savings account. You can get 5% in treasury products. If you're getting the same rate of return in a risk, in the stock market, you're subject to market conditions. In a risk-free environment, it's risk-free. So you cannot compare 5% risk-free to 5% in the market. So there's something called a risk-adjusted return. So usually, the more return you want to command, the more risk you have to take. As they say, wealth favors the bold. But there's also something called the stupid. If you're making 40% return in product A, but then you're making 40% return in product B, but product B is much more diversified and hedged and safer in general, theoretically, then I would say product B is a stronger investment because they're commanding the same return, but you're reducing your risk. It's something very, very powerful. That's why a lot of people, they don't look only at the, what percent return I get. They look at other metrics. What is the fundamentals? What is the underlying? What is the, what are the conditions? What kind of risk am I taking? Is there a different vehicle, a different selection I can make that has a better risk-free or risk-adjusted return? This is where brains come in. This is where analytics come in. You know what I mean? So guys, I'm asking you to make smart choices. Make smart choices. Look into what is a good investment strategy that meets your needs, and if you can find another vehicle that has a better return, I would, based on the risk, I would look into those. Again, not a financial advisor, but this is just my 2 cents. I think it's just common sense. Another problem is people look at what do you call it? They look at like just the yield. They don't look at total returns, basically basic arithmetic. If you have a return of a 100% return in dividends, but a lost 90% return in net asset value, or whatever, however you want to look at it, the underlying dropped by 90%, but your dividend return on your initial investment is, 100%. Some people say, "Oh, I just got my money back," but no, your underlying also dropped by 90%, and of that 100% you received, you have to pay, unless it's in a tax-free account, most likely somewhere between 20 and 30%. I don't know everyone's personal tax situation, but somewhere between 20 and 30%. Paying 20, let's say 30% of 100%, you're paying 30% is going bye-bye, and then your underlying dropped by 90%. So if somebody else had a 20% return and their net asset value dropped by zero, they actually kept 100% of the 20% return. If somebody has a 100% return, but their net asset value dropped by 90%, their total return is 10%. Unless they say that the net asset, the underlying keeps paying it again every year. But the question is, would your yield percent, like what's your yield on cost? That's what really, really, really matters. A lot of people, there are two columns. If you look at different dividend trackers or whatever, there's something called the yield that you get from the underlying, and then the yield on cost. The yield on cost is your personal most important yield. So there's something called dividend yield you see on the left. That's the yield of the investment supposedly they're supposed to give you. Then there's something called yield on cost. A lot of investments drop in price, a lot of these high yield dividend products, and then the yield on cost is your personal yield. And if your personal yield is much, much less, then you're not getting that actual best return. So you need to look into those things. Excuse me. So we've talked about a lot of stuff here. So basically what I'm going to be going into this coming week is just my personal decision. I'm looking into RDTE. I'm trying to find a good entry point to get into the Round Hill 0 date to expiration Russell 2000 fund, which they're going to be giving a dividend on the 27th of September. And I am looking into getting into that pretty heavy relative to my portfolio. Anyways, I know we spoke about a lot of different stuff. I've showed you this little spreadsheet. So before we clock out, I don't want to get too much into spreadsheets, but I look at this as my little, point of inspiration. So this is the most important thing, monthly yield. So the average, I've been an option trader for a number of years. And if you look it up on Google, what is the average option seller return? The average option seller return is about 2% a month in selling options. 2% a month equates to 24% annualized. The average market return is about 10%. So you're as an option seller, you're commanding more than double the return of the market. So yes, these high yield dividend ETFs that are option based are giving you a crazy return. At least, once you get more than 24% return, they're going on very high volatile options, which is not a problem if that's your risk appetite. my target, when I was selling options, my target of getting the best return would be about 4% a month. A lot of people, that's the golden rule, to try to get 4% a month or 1% per week. If you're getting that, you are golden. And the crazy thing is that instead of retiring in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years when your health span is falling apart, let's say if somebody made $100,000 a year and they do not cannibalize their funds, they just reinvest their funds and let it grow and compound, how fast can they replace their income? So they're going to make $4,000 gross, $48,000 a year. It's almost like they have a person, a clone of them working for them, making $23 an hour. So you have this extra clone working for you, $23 an hour, 40 hours a week. And if you put in $500 a paycheck, which comes as 26 paychecks in the year, so it's $13,000 that one is reinvesting on top of which one is contributing plus the reinvestments. You could see here that by year, the yearly gross. We're talking gross, because let's say someone's making $100,000 gross. The yearly gross by year 2, that's after 3 full years of investing, would be 120,000. That means they've surpassed, even adjusted for inflation, roughly, they have basically replaced their income. It's a quick exit ramp to retirement. It's life in the fast lane. You can get out of this. Can you imagine, from point A to point B, you get there in 2 years? If you're talking about a 2% return per month, which is a little bit more conservative, until you get that, again, until you get to that 100,000, let's see, year 3, your yearly gross would be 57,000. Year 4, 74,000, and year 5, 95,000. Year 6, you'd surpass your initial salary, maybe with some inflation. So even 6 years, that's 6, 7 years, that's a lot quicker than 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Obviously with 100% reinvestment, of course you have to factor in the taxes. So it's going to be, maybe you have to add maybe another year, because you have to factor in about 30% taxes on top of that. So yeah, there is some talk. I don't want to get too much into politics, but the certain parties are talking about taxing you on your unrealized gains. If they're taxing you on unrealized gains, it actually would make high yield dividend income ETFs more attractive, because those products you are anyways getting realized return and getting paid taxes on. The people who go for growth, their mentality is you forego your taxes for a while. But if you're going to be paid on unrealized gains, then it may cause a shift to this realm. Anyways, I'll get off my rant. This is the Working Investor over and out. Have a wonderful weekend.